Today is part 4 of our Building the Cascadia video series. In this episode I'm going to run wiring and hook the MFC up and get the truck actually running. It's a little shorter than the other ones, but coming after this will be painting, so let's get started. Before we install the MFC in the truck, there's a couple parts that need to be built. This coupler deck, and the cab floor. I'm not going to film myself putting this together, but I just wanted to show you a couple of the parts. This is the MFC part that mounts in here. This little slider fits in there. Notice I already greased it up. And then when this slides, excuse me, when a trailer is attached, it moves the switch and lets the truck know that the trailer is hooked up. What that does is changes the MFC's mode so it knows the trailer is hooked up, and it changes the sound. The truck works harder when it's pulling the trailer. You get coupling and uncoupling sounds. So if you have the MFC, this little bit goes in here. It's a bunch of real fiddly parts, this little tiny screw, so I'm going to put it together and then I'll come back. You can see here my assembled coupler. The little switch is mounted onto the plate, and I slid the pin through and mounted this plate. Notice that I ran the wires out the front. You got to kind of wiggle them around, because from now on running the wiring is a big deal. You want to think about everything, because Tamiya doesn't give you a lot of advice on running the wiring. Matter of fact, they don't give you any. I like to keep the wiring hidden underneath the chassis. Take a look here. There is enough room between these members and the floor plates that you can run the wiring along like this, and the floor plate can go over it. You can kind of tuck them up in here. I'll show you a couple tips I do along the way. Right now, for example, I ran this out the front because our coupler mounts like this, and there's a convenient hole right here I can run this wire through. Get it underneath the truck. Run this here, and then attach it to my wiring bundle running up underneath the truck. When we get to the MFC, we have this floor plate. It has holes in it to run wiring up, and the MFC is going to stand like this. So our wires will come up through the floor plates and go up to the MFC. Some of them you have to hook up before you even mount this because they're hard to get to. So we will, I'll finish putting this coupler together. You notice I painted the floor plate. Just thought it would look good with my other painted parts. I'm going to mount this on the truck. I'm going to run some of the wiring. I'll show you how I do that. As I plan out the wiring, I've got this plate just set on here. What I've decided to do is I'm going to run the wiring up the side channel, over the top of this, below this one, and then up underneath the floor plate. So I'm going to use really two things to kind of get my wiring organized. One of them are good old normal tie wraps, the little tiny ones. I think I got these at Harbor Freight. And aluminum tape. This stuff is magic. I cut pieces of it. It sticks to everything. It's really hard. It's actually really real aluminum, and I'll make little strips of it to attach the wiring to the bottom of pieces to the sides of channels. I'll get some of this threaded and put through here and show you what it looks like. But I got this aluminum tape a long time ago. One roll will last a modeler for a lifetime, and I use it for a lot of things. Sealing light cracks, reflective surfaces. I've even used it for aluminum panels on models. Wonderful stuff to have handy. So I'll get working on this and we'll see what we can do. I tied up a few wires. I'm going to show you. You can see that I've pulled the wires over to the side. Well, at least I hope you can see it. And then there's a piece of aluminum tape in here. Taped them up inside the girder. I will come back later and just paint those with some Tamiya flat black. Hope you can see it in there. I wrapped the tape all the way around, and it's like a solid piece of metal in there to hold the wires. Then I pulled them up over the top of this brace, and I used a piece of aluminum tape to hold them down side by side, because if they were in a bundle, they would interfere with this piece. There's only enough space in there to run the wires through as a flat side by side part. So then I'm going to tape it underneath here. I'll go underneath this channel, tape it in here, underneath this channel, and tape it all along, and then bring it up here into the floor piece later. So I'm going to go ahead and tape all those up and mount this piece, because I'll join that wire with the others, and we'll get the wires run up alongside the frame. Should be nice and neat, no hanging wires underneath, and it doesn't take a lot, but a little bit of attention here makes for a lot better looking truck than having wires drug all over. All the wiring is taped up. I've got some of the wiring up through the floor here, you can see, and you can probably see kind of my wire routing. I'm going to paint these wires flat black to hide them even more. There's a piece of the aluminum tape in there. Let's see how I've routed the wires up. Aluminum tape holding it here. Tried to keep everything neat and clean. This wiring is really, there's a lot of it. So now my project is to MFC will mount right here. I need to run the motor wires through the floor and up. This is way too long, and I'm going to replace this with a Dean's connector anyway. So I'll get some of that wiring routed up, and should be ready to give it a test run here pretty soon. And then it gets complicated, because the rest of the wiring all runs forward. The body has to be kind of in place to get it on there. There's not plugs between the wiring, so that'd be a pretty big project, and it's kind of be mixed up with painting and all that together. So I'll get the rest of this wiring done, and then we'll see what we have. Pulling the wires from the front is the same. You can see I've run the power wires up. There's a gap between the transmission and the side channel here, and I'm pulling back here. I haven't tied these up yet. The servo wire is the same way. The only problem with the servo wires is they aren't long enough, so I've got to use a servo extension. And I always get some soft wire from the craft store here. I always tie these together. I like to just take a piece of soft wire, put it through each side, and then twist it together. Use a pair of needle nose pliers to twist it. And then clip it off. You can see that now the wire runs there. They will not come apart. So I will tuck those up, pull them up through the floor, and I can start hooking wires to the MFC. As you can see, there's quite a bundle of wires in here now. I mounted the vibration unit with 4 screws. I've got my receiver plugged in. I've got all the wires running from the back, from the servos, and from the motor plugged in. And this tape's in here. One problem, though, is way down here at the bottom is the plug for the speaker. Now, here's the rub. Okay, the body sits up here like this. The speaker sits on top of the body, something like that. So now, this wire drops down in here and plugs in at the very bottom of the MFC. And there is no possible way to reach it. And you have to plug it and unplug it to remove the body. So what I'm going to have to do, so I can get this set in. I can reach through the back and plug in these other wires up, because they're all up high. But that bottom one, there's no way. So I am going to take this wire and cut it and put another plug in it, so that I can leave the very bottom one plugged in, and then I can get the MFC fastened down and take the body off by pulling a little higher plug. So I'm going to do that little project, then I'm going to mount the MFC down. Now I'm not going to tie up all this wiring yet, because we still have all the wiring from the front, the headlights, the parking lights, the turn signals, the fog lights, the speaker, the roof lights. So once I get those all run through, then I'll kind of try and neaten everything up all at once. It is a bit of a project. There's a lot of wiring in here. I added a plug. It's a Dean's micro plug here. So now I can plug J31 in way down at the bottom. You can see why I couldn't get that in there, and now I've got a wire with a plug that I can use to plug in my speaker. I may have to do this with a couple of the other lights also. I'm thinking the lights that are up here on the top, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Well, I think I've got everything hooked up here. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in and try it out. I'm going to leave the speaker unplugged when I start up. So I'll turn the radio on. And I'll plug in a battery here. We'll fire it up, turn the switch on. Now since there's no speaker, there's no sound, but you'll notice that the vibration engine has started up, and that's why I wanted to leave the speaker off. So that's working fine. We'll plug this in. Okay, so now we should have our steering, and there's our right turn signal, left turn signal. Should have a horn, long horn. You flip the dual rate, and that should be able to go through the light functions 1, 2, and 3. Emergency flashers, and then our throttle, forward and reverse, with brakes. You'll notice how nice and slowly the tires turn because of that 45 turn motor. And then our shutdown sounds. Everything looks like it's working good. Now I'll move on to the body. So the next video on this will probably be a short video, but the next one will be on finishing the body, painting, adding all the lights from the front, tying up the wiring, and basically finishing up the truck. So I'll do that in the next video, and then the final one will be the finished product all ready to go. So again, thank you for watching. Love the comments, and I love that you guys are subscribing to my channel. I'm going to have lots more interesting videos to come, so thanks again for watching.